we're gonna go full on Western here with a roundup. No, I kid. I'm not gonna go Western here, but it is a roundup because we're gonna talk about the ninth generation of consoles. All of them are on the horizon, except one of them's here because it's the Nintendo Switch. But the other two pieces of hardware that are going to be coming out this year are Microsoft's Xbox Series X and the Sony PlayStation 5, both of which have been revealed for the world to see. And for the longest time, right, you've had commentators. I mentioned when it came to the the Traders to America list in the introduction, or VTech USA, for example, and even those good old people I like on the Completely Unnecessary podcast, talking about how we could be on the last generation of consoles. They thought the eighth generation was going to be the last generation, but I'm going to make the argument here that we could be in a place where if Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft hold on to the greatest asset from each of their systems, that consoles could continue on for a while. Although it seems like Microsoft really doesn't want that, which is totally fine. I think they're planning, in terms of the super long term, very intelligently by doing what they're doing. But ultimately, I want to talk about what console makers need to be successful. And really, they need a few things. Number one, a good price. We don't know the prices for the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 yet, so it's not really something I want to discuss here. We do obviously know the price of the Nintendo Switch being $299, which is a nice, cheap little price for this underpowered system compared to its competitors. What they need is sufficiently stronger hardware from the last generation. So in that case, so you could see that obviously when it came to upgrading from something like the NES to the SNES, upgrading from the Sony PlayStation 1 to the PlayStation 2, upgrading from the Xbox to the Xbox 360 going into HD. That would have, those are sufficiently stronger pieces of hardware compared to the last generation in terms of graphics. But we need to think about stronger hardware in a different way here, because we're if we haven't hit the graphics plateau yet, we're pretty close to hitting that graphics plateau. Which gets me to what's most important here, which is a clear inherent benefit to having this piece of hardware. So in that sense, I mean some sort of not quite twist that makes you want that hardware, but something that makes it that when you are given the pitch of what this thing is, and you know a bunch of the things you can do, you can see, okay, this is why I would want this console, right? So basically, I just want to talk about what each of these console manufacturers should be doing here, right? Let's start with Microsoft. So to me, what Microsoft needs to do to continue making Xbox hardware successful is be what I would call the legacy console. So when I say that, I think about how the Series X, at least according to Microsoft, is going to be compatible with games from every single one of their consoles. The original Xbox, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and obviously now new Series X games. So that is something that Microsoft can really, really, really tap into to appear super duper pro-consumer, right? Because especially with the new feature that they're talking about called Smart Delivery. And what Smart Delivery basically is any game that is already compatible on the Xbox One may be enhanced with Smart Delivery on the Series X. So a great example is going to be Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time, which, yeah, it is about time the Crash Bandicoot 4 is coming around. But I digress from that. You can play Crash Bandicoot 4 on the Xbox One when it comes out in October, but you'll also be able to put it in the Series X and receive major graphical and frame rate enhancements to the game. Which I guess that's not too different from backwards compatibility, but essentially that's the idea here in that sense, is with it being the legacy console, you don't have to, like, you can upgrade and get a new piece of hardware, right? But still be able to play everything. It doesn't matter if you have an original Xbox game. It doesn't matter if you have a 360 game. Odds are you will be able to play it on the Series X. And that is extremely enticing for consumers. Because then, in that sense, they don't have to feel pressured to get a bunch of new games because they already have a massive library from whatever Xbox consoles they've happened to have in the past. Maybe they started with the original Xbox during the 6th generation. Now they can play good old rares grabbed by the ghoulies on their Xbox Series X with a huge graphical resolution. That's the word I was looking for. Granted, it'll probably stay the same frame rate that it was on the original Xbox, but it still works. They don't have to go ahead and dig out their original Xbox or their 360 to be able to play it. If they bought, what's another good example? If they wanted to play one of the old, I guess it's weird to call it old school. Not that it's something I really played, but I guess it's sort of old school now because it's 2 generations ago. If they want to play one of the old Call of Duties from the 360, they can just pop that into their Series X and it'll work right away. And like I said, with the Xbox One games, you have smart delivery. So every Xbox, well, I guess I don't know if it's every Xbox One game, but for sure a ton of Xbox One games will just work out of the box. In fact, I specifically remember Phil Spencer talking about how, there's not going to be a Series X exclusive for a long while. Like a one that absolutely will not be able to run on the Xbox One as is. So that's very exciting. That's a very pro-consumer move because, especially right now during this time where a lot of people are financially struggling in the US, they might not be able to have the money to buy an Xbox Series X right now. If they do, and that's great. But they could just keep buying new games for their Xbox One and keep playing on that, which is huge. Because especially in the past, when you would see something like, what's a good example? Like Metal Gear Solid 5, if I remember correctly, was both on the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4. I think it was just Ground Zeroes that was on the PS3. I just want to check just to be absolutely certain. For whatever reason, my computer isn't getting internet, so let me pull out my cellular device here quick just to make absolutely certain. Yes, so actually, even the full game, The Phantom Pain, was available on the PS3, the 360, the PS4, and the Xbox One. The PS3 and the 360 versions, though, were definitely way neutered compared to the PS4 and Xbox One versions, right? But being able to have basically the same game out of the box on the Xbox One and the Series X could be huge benefits to them. That's their one inherent benefit that they need. And obviously the Series X is going to be stronger hardware than the Xbox One. Otherwise you wouldn't have better performance on it than the One. One thing that I do think it could do better is to not look like a refrigerator. Yes, all of the consoles right now, to one extent, in my opinion, look kind of stupid. And the Xbox Series X looks like a refrigerator. And or even like an old tower PC, but like super, like it's like, or even the GameCube but stretched super tall. It looks ridiculous to me. I've never seen a console that looks quite like that. In regards to what Sony needs to do, they really have 2 things. Number one, they need to embrace the PlayStation 5's SSD and VR. So I distinctly remember, it's like I didn't actually watch the PlayStation 5 event because I like sticking to one system, and ultimately I know I'm going to want to play the Nintendo games. Not that I don't think I should branch out, because if I were to branch out, I would probably rather get a PlayStation 5, just because I've owned the PlayStation 2 and a bunch of it. Like, I've played a bunch of PlayStation games in the past, and I've preferred it over the Xbox brand, but I digress. I remember viewing the Roundup, at least, of the PS5 reveal, and there were 2 games that stuck out to me during it. One that was like the way you do not want to market a new console today, and the way that you do want to market it. So, to me, the way that Sony discussed NBA 2K21 is not how you want to show off a new console. And I talked about it earlier in the Animal Crossing New Horizons review here, right? What the 2K21 segment primarily focused on is how so much better the game is going to look on the PlayStation 5 compared to the PlayStation 4 version of 2K20, right? It's going to look so much more realistic. You can see all like the individual hairs and the sweat beads and all that sort of stuff. And like I said, we're getting closer and closer, if not already there, with the graphics plateau. So really what you're doing with that is showing that this console is not going to have longevity. What do I mean when I say that? So when Sony goes ahead in a few years from now and decides, okay, we need to make the PlayStation 6, well, we can't really make the graphics any better on it. What are you supposed to market that on then? If all you're focused on is the graphics, right? We can render zits on them now. See, that's not a selling point. Where you can only go so far with it. Where they did really well, to me, that shows the strength of the PlayStation 5 with that SSD, is with Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. So the whole idea of that game is how the main characters, Ratchet and Clank, are going to travel through rifts into other worlds, and we see it happen. They travel from one world to a completely different looking world in a snap. Instantly, and that's only possible with the PlayStation 5 solid-state hard drive, their SSD. So I guess basically what I'm saying is Sony needs to lean into the fact that consumers are going to basically have no annoying load times, right? You're going to go through one environment to a totally wildly different one in an instant. You're never going to have any loading screens to have to go through because you're always in the game. Granted, you're going to lose like the tips and the tricks and all that sort of fun stuff you get because you have loading screens, but to me that may end up being a small price to pay if loading can be as instantaneous, at least, as Sony is making it look. And the other thing I said they had to lead into is that Sony really has the only affordable true VR set that doesn't require a complicated, powerful PC. You know, Nintendo has the Nintendo Labo VR kit, but that's not really being used in the traditional VR sense, if only because it doesn't have a head strap. That's annoying. Whereas the PS4 right now is really the only console in that sense that uses VR. That is a huge boon to Sony. If you want to play VR games, but you don't want to put the investment it takes to get a super powerful PC and have to learn like all the ins and outs of using Linux or Windows or whatever, I can't imagine Mac OS would be great with VR, but I digress. Maybe it could be. If you just want to have that out-of-the-box experience, the PlayStation 4 and 5 are going to be for you. It's that simple. And then that gets into what Nintendo needs to do. So I want to talk about, because we already have the Nintendo Switch out. Really what I want to talk about is the Nintendo Switch's inevitable successor. And to me, there's 3 routes that Nintendo could go down. But there's only one of those 3 I think could be the truly successful option. The first route I could see Nintendo going down when they're done with the Switch is, we're going to do something completely, totally different. Why? That's what failed with the Wii U. Why would you want to go down something completely, totally different that could end up being a total failure, right? Just because it's new doesn't mean it's going to be good. Now, granted, I want to see these console manufacturers innovate. Part of the reason why I don't want a Series X is that it's super boring, right? Not only does it look like a refrigerator, but it's just another piece of hardware with a console that hooks up to a TV. That's boring. It doesn't do anything special, necessarily, other than the smart delivery, which is brilliant. Well, you know, the PS5, it's great. It looks like an internet router, which is something I should have mentioned. There's a problem with it. I wish it didn't look like a stupid internet router, or that the one with the discs looks like it has a giant like butt coming off of it compared to the all-digital edition. But I digress from that too. But those are, at the end of the day, they're still just boxes you hook up to your TV. Nintendo has always tried to do something that's a little bit more than just a box you hook up to your TV post the SNES, right? Or the N64. You could have 4 players play out of the box on the console. That was huge. With the GameCube, it was something as simple as, we have a handle on the back, and we made it small so you can take it with you to parties and stuff. And it just had the greatest controller on the planet, apparently. I don't really have an opinion on that either way, but people swear by the GameCube controller. With the Wii, motion controls. With the Wii U, their first real true failure on this, a second screen for a console. Is your idea something that people want and is new? That's the question that Nintendo has to be asking. So I would not recommend going down the path of doing something totally new, because the Switch, at least, or just recently passed 60 million units sold. It's a popular idea. It's something that could change the landscape of gaming. The second option that they could go with is, kind of like I just said, releasing their own boring box. Why? First off, that's just not a very Nintendo thing to do, as I just outlined, because they like to change it up with every piece of hardware that they do, even with their handhelds. Here's a gray brick. Now it's in color. Now it's even more powerful and has shoulder buttons, and instead of being tall, it'll be wide. We'll have 2 screens. We'll do 3D vision, or 3D stereoscopic 3D. What am I saying? And again, Nintendo always seems to go with the least powerful hardware they can possibly get that's just enough of an upgrade. So if you're already going out of the gate with assuming that they're going to have the least powerful console, then at least make sure it has something different so that it has that inherent benefit to it. Really what they should do, and this is the third option, is invest in this idea of the Switch. Okay, Google Stadia is trying to kind of sort of be a console you can take on the go because you can just use it on Android, but it's failing because you need to stream the game. xCloud could be really good with that, but we don't know yet. You still have to stream the games, and while it still seems like it's performing better compared to Stadia. I mean, first, it's not officially out, so we'll have to see what happens when it gets fully implemented and adopted. You still have to stream the game. The Switch has the benefit that the games are downloaded directly to it because it is an independent unit. Either the game, or you have a cartridge that you put in there to play. So lean into the fact that it could be the best portable gaming experience you can get if you want to play more than mobile games. That's what I would do if I were Nintendo. And while I don't think the Switch console itself out of the dock looks super stupid, in the dock it can look kind of funny and like a weird sort of sandwich that's overflowing. So the other thing that all these console manufacturers need to do is make better, less stupid looking designs. So that is the 9th generation console roundup. We just have one more topic to chat about here today. My good old-fashioned favorite thing to do, I've done it once here now, a Smash character analysis for Min Min from ARMS.